two more to enable the tech industry. Taxes.
Oh, wow. Are you sure you're
So,
not friends with Ruto?
no. I mean, what I mean is remove taxes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, exactly.
Let's create an enabling environment,
Mhm.
right? It is almost impossible for your startup to thrive. You may have a great idea
Yeah.
that you're building for your own community, so you understand the need intimately, but you will never get off the ground for these financial
True.
reasons.
True.
So, tax breaks for companies below a certain threshold. We need to be listening to our customers. You know, we
Yeah.
don't have a business unless we do.
True.
And so and
The
like you
government
say,
should actually know that.
exactly, 100%. But especially with nascent technologies, if you're not listening and you're, say, taking your cues from the Western world, it's never going to work. We already know women are savers. We know that
Yeah.
women, there was actually a study done by Caribou Digital that showed that women actually conduct 90% of their transactions on USSD, right? As opposed to an app. We're often asked, why do you not have an app? I mean, isn't that first thing a tech founder does,
Mhm.
right? But this is the reason it's on USSD. NSEasy is here to democratize the stock market.
Okay.
We're here to bring the stock market to the common man.
Yep. Carlos, from Africa Tech Radio. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This is all what makes easy keys.
All right. My name is Rubin Mukkam-Owuor, and I am the COO at a product called NSEasy. NSEasy is a stock trading platform that it operates on USSD. So it doesn't have an app. You don't have to download anything. You don't have to create any new passwords. It works on any kind of phone. And the aim of this product really is to bring stock trading out of the realm of being exclusively for the ultra wealthy, exclusively for those in the know who have a broker on speed dial, to what we call in Kenya the mwananchi, so the common man. You can trade stocks for as little as 100 shillings. And so there's no minimum amount. It used to be that you could only trade, a minimum of 100 lots. But now with NSEasy, you can buy one share. That's what you'd like. So yeah, with the entire objective is to democratize the stock market.
Okay. Before MSc, tell us a bit about.
So I am actually a lawyer by profession. I was a disputes lawyer in litigation and arbitration for 12 years, 10 of those years here in Kenya. So I actually worked, with many different clients all over the continent, advising on their disputes, which would, in the cases where I would advise, be governed by English law. So, being from a Commonwealth country myself, I was able to step in those situations, advise them on settlement options, if any, and if not, go to a full hearing,
Okay.
which was very interesting. The industries that my clients came from were super varied.
Okay.
So, hospitality industry in
Okay.
Rwanda,
Okay.
emergency power plant equipment supplier in Tanzania, we're very wealthy businessman in
Yes.
Kenya
Yeah.
who had a dispute with his family, all kinds of different disputes that I used to advise on. So that sort of informed, I guess my curiosity
Okay.
for different sectors and what people are doing.
Mhm.
So after that, when COVID happened, I think I went through a period in my career where I was feeling stagnant, not feeling challenged. I wasn't
Mhm.
growing. And I really wanted a new challenge. And I was certain that that challenge would be in the tech space
Okay.
for many reasons. Most of them being that the tech space is constantly changing, right?
Yeah. True.
There is no one expert in their field.
Yes.
The landscape changes every single day. And so that I knew would keep it fresh and exciting.
Yeah.
So I then got into building a digital bank. So I worked for BRAS, which is a Nigerian corporate digital bank,
Okay.
and helped them expand their efforts from Nigeria to Kenya.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, so it was
How was that?
super exciting, super exciting. We did everything. Well, I say we. When we started out, it was just me. But everything from building partnerships with local tier one banks, traditional banks, but also working with payment services providers who are more agile and able to, understand
Navigate
our
through.
value proposition and also work with us without having too many regulatory constraints like how a bank would. And then also new banks in the market, like a microfinance bank that was built to help fintechs with core banking infrastructure. So that was super interesting, listening to the rationale, to the motivations of each of these different types of partners. And then also working with the Central Bank of Kenya to understand, there's no regulatory framework around digital banking in Kenya. So trying to understand their perspective on what their concerns are and how we can help to mitigate those concerns. Of course, we worked completely on the basis that we as Brass would never hold customer funds, right? The funds would always sit with our licensed partner who was authorized to hold those funds and where the funds were insured by the Kenya Deposit Insurance Company. So customers felt comfortable, they felt confident that they could trust us. And trust was a very big part of introducing a product that was so nascent in the market.
Especially for the digital bank, right?
Exactly. In Kenya, digital banking is not prevalent at all. In fact, we had to explain it to a lot of our MSME customers as we tried to acquire them. In fact, a lot of our customer acquisition campaign had to center around customer awareness and education before acquisition. But then, unfortunately, before we were able to fully ventilate that and fully explore it, Brass ran out of funding, and we shut down Kenya in January this year. And then eventually, even in Nigeria, as you probably know, they sold to Paystack. Yes. So since then, I've been consulting for various fintechs, but the main one, my main, endeavor has been helping NSEasy with trying to figure out how their go-to-market strategy, who our target customer really is, and how to reach
them.
Yeah.
So, what would you say inspired you to founding NSEasy? And from a challenge perspective now, right? So did you see a need or a challenge in the market and then a backward integration kind of thing or what?
Yes. So, okay. One of the main reasons, and I want to clarify that I didn't found NSEasy. It was my CEO who founded it. And essentially, the rationale behind NSEasy is that we are currently in Kenya experiencing such a difficult economy, right? It's not been easy. Taxes have gone up. There have been statutory deductions from our incomes. Even the informal sector, which is a large sector of our population, working population, is being targeted. Now, it seemed unfair to our founder that you are a customer of so many of the companies that are listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, but you never get to benefit from your patronage. So here you are every day. You buy airtime from Safaricom. You may or may not have a bank account at Equity. You may or may not buy a certain tea brand. There are, there's so many local companies that are partly owned by the public, but that a certain section of society never ever becomes stakeholders of. That's the main thing that we're trying to change with NSEasy. We want a paradigm shift in that. We want to make the Mwananchi feel like they're stakeholders of these companies that they purchase from every single day. Household names, And so in order to change that and bring a little bit of what we've seen in global trends elsewhere to Kenya, we created NSEasy.
Okay. Would you say the tech landscape currently in Kenya helps with the launching of NSEasy? Do you think the market or the landscape is mature enough for it?
Okay, those are two different questions. So the tech landscape does certainly facilitate our ability to launch in the market, to go to the market. there are so many financial products that Kenyans use all the time. Primarily mobile lending, I would say.
Yes, that's true.
So in fact, so much so that, remember I was talking about enabling regulatory framework. There actually is one for mobile lenders. It's called
Yes.
the Digital Credit Providers Regulations, and these digital lenders are now licensed. So that shows you how much we've advanced
Yes.
to accommodate those players in the market. So Kenyans are aware that digital financial services are available to them no matter what their status is, whether they're part of the formal economy or informal. They do access those services. In fact, the government has recently made a huge push called the Hustler Fund, in which they are trying to extend credit to micro and small businesses in order to grow the economy.
Grow the economy.
Yeah.
True. True.
So the fact that Kenyans are aware of these options and are aware that the tech will enable them to improve their financial situation is very enabling for a product like ours. When you say the second question, which is the market mature enough and ready for this product? I'm going to say that I'm not sure. I think that there's a lot of lack of awareness regarding the stock market, fear, and fear mongering is a big part of stock trading.
True,
Right? Lots of people talk about losses that they've made, and fewer people talk about gains that they've made. In fact, this is one of the primary alternative sources or avenues for investment that people in the Western world use to invest their wealth. However, here in Kenya, we talk about money market funds. No one ever talks about the stock market. Which, for the reasons I described earlier, being stakeholders of these companies you buy every day, makes no sense.
True.
So we need to, again, like what I was saying earlier with Brass, customer education, awareness building is going to be a big part of our customer acquisition exercise.
True.
And so we will get there. We will get to the point where we are mature enough to understand it and acquire these customers. But it's on us to make that effort. I'll talk more about this later, but our main ethos is to go to where our customers are. We're not trying to get them to come to us.
Okay. Looking at the landscape now in Kenya, what excites you about it? Why Kenya?
That's an interesting question. So
the world
Kenya?
is a global village.
Yes.
You could literally pick any place, but
Yes.
why Kenya? And what excites you about this ecosystem? Because you seem very excited when you speak about this ecosystem.
Absolutely. Yes. So Kenya is an extremely exciting ecosystem because of the energy of the people in this country. Every single person, and I guess this is not something I was used to before, but every single person has an alternative source of income. It's almost ingrained in their DNA, right?
True.
You may have a day job, that's fine, and maybe you have several day jobs, but you will always have a backup plan. Yeah. I mean, it speaks to perhaps the insecurity we feel as a nation, and that's a deeper, conversation to have. Yeah. But that inherent need to have a side hustle, to have an alternative source of income, I think is what interests me as someone who's propagating this product here. I really do think that people are looking for an alternative source or an alternative avenue for investment. Like I say, there are certain types of investments that have really taken off in recent years, but this is something that people want to do. They just don't know they can. Currently, like I say, there's this misperception that only the wealthy can
interact this way.
And invest on the stock market. That you need a broker, that you have to know a broker, that you also have to know a lot of complex financial information about these companies. But the truth is that if you keep up to date on news, which I can assure you every Kenyan does, then you know what's happening. You know if there's a supply chain issue affecting the sugar industry or some kind of government intervention that's gone wrong. You know that.
Yes.
And so as long as you do, we need to, it's like I say, on us to make it clear to customers that if you're abreast of that information, you can be a participant in the stock market.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Okay. A lot of companies in Africa face scaling challenges, right? What are some of these scaling challenges you've experienced over a period of time? And what are some of these challenges you see in future?
So scaling, I mean, 100%. I feel like you already know the answer to that question, right? It's funding. It's
Yes.
almost impossible to get solid funding where they're not asking the sky and the moon of you. They're cognizant of the challenges and the risks that you have to overcome. I was reading this article the other day where it can be, VC funders would actually encourage you to pluck numbers out of thin air and put it into a financial projection that's completely unrealistic. You know, in as opposed to you being realistic with them and saying, look, these are the challenges.
This
100%,
is the
I'm
state
smart
of the
enough to figure
market.
it out.
Yeah.
But please be cognizant of these things. And here are some realistic projections. So funding, I think, for people like us who just want to be authentic, who want to be sincere, is a challenge. Access to that funding is a challenge. Other scaling challenges, I would say, are enabling infrastructure. So I spoke earlier about regulatory landscape
Yes,
and
yes, yeah,
regulatory
yeah,
infrastructure.
yeah.
For financial services like ours, of course, KYC is a big thing.
Yes.
Now, interestingly, in respect of NSEasy, it's actually worked in our favor. We have a super enabling KYC infrastructure
Okay.
that the Kenyan government actually developed recently that enables us to simplify the process of opening what's called a CDS account, which you need to trade,
Yes.
from what it used to be, which was you need 2 copies of your passport photographs, copies of your KRA PIN, which is your tax information. You need your copy of your ID, a form that you fill out, and you submit all these hard copies to a certain institution. Now, with this digital database that the Kenyan government has created, we're able to access that database with just 2 data points from you. That's your ID number and your email address.
Okay.
There are no documents required.
Wow,
Right?
that's impressive.
You just put that in, like I say, it's a USSD. So there's nowhere for you to upload a document or anything like that. You put in those 2 data points, it accesses the government database, and that's how we do our KYC. So
Lovely.
yeah, pros and cons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lovely. How does NSEasy platform work?
All right. So let me get into it properly in detail. So you dial the USSD code *665*44#, and then you input your ID number and your email address. If you don't have a CDS account, the database does your KYC checks on you and it pulls up a CDS account for you within 1 business day. It's usually done within a couple of hours, but we like to manage expectations. If you already have a CDS account, what the platform does is to link your existing CDS account with our trading platform. You'll be informed of this link within the same business day. And then from there on, you can trade stocks. So you can ask for prices, execute or request that a trade is executed. And you are also informed of changes in your portfolio that exceed 10%. And you're asked, do you want to sell or do you want to buy? So it keeps you abreast without going into the realm of providing financial information. We rely on the customer to educate themselves, to keep abreast of news, and then to make informed financial decisions. Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of AI conversations going on, right? And it's a competitive advantage for any company who can leverage it properly.
Yeah.
How is NSEasy leveraging this, or is it a future plan for you?
We don't leverage it at the moment.
Okay.
I think for us, we want to be really careful. We have a great responsibility in launching this product in the market. We don't want to introduce AI at a stage when we are still trying to sensitize the market to the product.
True.
Right? So we want to first build awareness. We want to encourage someone to bet only 50 bob or 100 bob on making a trade and then you understand how that stock moves, how it relates to information that you have about that company, and then slowly and incrementally increase your investment in the stock market. I think the attraction of AI is really high that, oh, this bot does processes tons and tons of data for you and analyzes market trends over the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out this prediction or this recommendation,
Yeah.
which you then, ignoring the information that you have, act on. And the disaster that could ensue is just not something that we want to experiment with.
Okay.
So we like I say, at the moment, we're not using AI at all. In the future, I think it'll very much be driven by what we hear from the customers in terms of feedback, in terms of also watching the market and seeing how it evolves. Does it get to that mature place where people are like, you can trust us now? Like we know what we're doing. You don't have to protect us. Take the kid gloves off,
Yes.
and then perhaps. But at the current moment, no.
There is a current perception about people who have bought stocks in the past, right? And then the stocks reducing in value, right? That is a possibility here, right? Have you thought of ways on how you would address these issues, especially with your customers?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we seek to explain in our customer awareness initiatives is certainly that the stock market does move in both directions, and that you really do have to keep abreast of news and information on the companies whose stocks you've bought. There are annual reports that are released by all of these listed companies, again, keeping abreast of that. Um, and also just using your own intuition. Like if you're buying a certain brand of sugar, you're no longer seeing it on the shelves in the supermarket. It's time to ask,
True.
what's happening here?
True.
Is there something up with their distribution network or their supply chain? So I think that kind of education, as well as being cognizant, like of certain trading things that have become like ubiquitous, to people who are well informed. But for someone who's new in the stock market, that thing of buy and hold or buy low, sell high, all of those little bits of information that can help to inform them. And also the reality that, look, unless you're you're paying attention to what's happening with the company whose stock you've bought, it could go down and then you could lose money. But certainly our platform also will advise you on whether there's been more than a 10% shift in your portfolio. And if there has been, then we let you know and then you can make your decision.
Okay. Structurally now, right? I would take from the NASDAQ structure, right? NASDAQ technically has three parts. The listing business, the research business, and then the business that sells software to other stock exchanges around the world.
Yeah.
What's your market structure or what's your business structure like, or business strategy like with respect to NSEasy?
Interesting. So the business model at the moment is to take the product to the customers, right?
Yes.
We just want to go to market.
Yes.
Once we go to market and acquire a certain number of customers, we can then figure out the different revenue models, right? But for now, all we want to do is get to a point where we understand our customers. Like I say, our entire reason for existence, and I would say that in French if I knew how to pronounce it, is that we need to be listening to our customers. We don't have a business unless we do.
True.
And so the
like government should actually know that.
Exactly, 100%. But especially with nascent technologies, if you're not listening and you're, say, taking your cues from the Western world, it's never going to work. You may expect things to move in a certain direction and it never happens. So for us, our revenue model for now is purely based on transaction fees.
Okay.
In fact, at the moment, because we're trialing, we don't even make a margin.
Okay.
But in the future, the entire idea is it's actually volume driven.
Yes,
We
true.
want to get to a certain critical mass of customers. And once we understand them, like I say, the entire objective is to understand what people want from us. And once we do, we can start to think of diversifying that.
And you would be positioned for what economic class currently?
We are catering to, this is an interesting question. So, a certain demographic in terms of age, we want to cater to people between the ages of 18 and 35.
Okay.
So someone, a trader who's just coming to the market, right? Just graduated from uni, just making their first paycheck. How do we encourage financial health from the get-go, right? How do we introduce certain investment options to you from an age where you can, experiment small and then, like I say, make an incremental investment in the stock market. How it's also encouraging a certain diversity of voices in the stock market, right? We can't just have institutional traders that are buying like hundreds of thousands of and lots of shares. What we want is for people to have a voice in the market, right? And to inculcate that from a young age. So that's the age demographic. In terms of, say, socioeconomic demographic, we're looking to not just Kenya in terms of Nairobi, but also rural Kenya. So the fact, like I say, the USSD platform really allows
Yes.
us to reach people outside of Nairobi, people who are not in urban areas, who don't have access to a smartphone. So there's that, and certainly our customer awareness and education campaigns will cater to that. Um, yeah, I would say that's for now, broadly speaking, the demographic that we want to target.
Okay. Milestones now, right?
Yeah.
And I'll look at milestones with respect to the next 5 years,
Hmm.
but also with respect to impact, right? You have seen a lot of challenges and built a structure to help with these challenges. Now, what is that impact within the next 5 years that you see?
Hmm.
And yes, what do you think the future holds? Are there metrics that you're currently looking at to say, hey, next 5 years, this is X, Y, Z? Yeah.
Mm. Right. So interesting. Okay, so two different aspects to that question in terms of milestones for growth, but also milestones for impact.
Yeah.
Um, they're closely related, I think. For the next 5 years, let me talk about the next 1 year.
Okay.
I'm a doer, so so let's break that down. I think for us, partnerships for us to get to where the customers are is super important for us. So we're currently in talks with the Kenyan government, the Hustler Fund, in
Okay.
order to
True.
offer people who are borrowing also the option to invest.
That's
So
very great.
yeah, so
Yeah.
there's so many. The Hustler Fund has access to thousands, hundreds of thousands of MSMEs
Yes.
who are accessing this credit in order to reach financial health,
Yeah.
to get to a point where they're stable and no longer feeling insecure. Now, along with that will come with, a little bit of education on your investment opportunities, the stock market, and offering that option on the same platform where you access these funds.
Mhm.
Um, the second objective, well, still in the vein of partnerships, is to go to private partners, for example, digital credit providers, so mobile lenders, and also other financial institutions.
Okay.
Again, to offer that value added services to their customers. They already have an existing and loyal
Customer base.
database
True.
of customers. So just to go there and say, look, here's another option. You may be borrowing for your daily needs, but you're going to get to a point where you've built that trust with your partner lender, right? So when you have, and you've gotten, again, like I say, I keep emphasizing this thing of financial health because that's what we want to encourage. I think stock markets have a bad reputation as an unhealthy or risky means of investing, but I think that it can be a very responsible way of investing,
True.
can be well informed, that it can be measured and de risked to a certain point.
Yes.
So again, that relationship with your where you are, like I say, going to the customers and where they are. So they already have a trusted relationship with their lender. Offering NSEasy as a type of option that they have to invest the funds they borrow would be a great thing.
Yes.
So partnerships is a strong focus for me, mainly because one of the milestones we want to reach is our first 100,000 customers. Right? With 100,000 customers, we can then develop an understanding of what this market requires,
True.
what they want to see more of. So, do they need more education? Do they need access to brokers or forums to get together and discuss? Whatever that might be,
Yes.
for us to cater to them, the first 100,000 customers is a big milestone for us.
Yes.
So that's certainly one. And if you now talk about the corresponding impact, like I say, especially because we're focusing outside of the urban centers as well,
Yes.
bringing everyone into the fold, right? Bringing financial literacy,
Yes.
improving that financial literacy across the board, especially with women. You know, we see such a big gender gap in financial inclusion and financial literacy between women and men.
Yeah.
We already know women are savers. We know that
Yeah.
women, there was actually a study done by Caribou Digital that showed that women actually conduct 90% of their transactions on USSD, right? They, as opposed to an app. So
Nice.
that's the main driving reason behind the fact that, I mean, we're often asked, why do you not have an app? I mean, isn't that first thing a tech founder does, right? But this is the reason it's on USSD. We don't want to shy away from the fact that our main demographic is the common man. It's not, you know, we're not, as I said, you asked me this question about our revenue model and revenue streams. We're not trying to look for you know, someone of a higher demographic. We're trying to really focus on the common man. And that's why for the foreseeable future, it will be a USSD.
Yeah.
If we start to see demand from our customers, of course, we'll pivot. That's our nature as a startup.
Yeah.
But that in terms of impact, I think that grand vision of bringing women into the fold and improving financial literacy and inclusion for them is a big one for us.
Yes, and for me particularly, I think it also helps with making some of these companies more responsible. Because you see, sometimes companies just act however they want to act, but now when the citizens and the public are invested, you know where their heart is when you start messing up as a brand.
Yeah.
So that gives you a good, it helps you take more important and more careful decisions as a brand. So I really do like that, especially with the public being part of it. Yes.
Yes, yes. And if there's anything we've seen in Kenya over the last couple of months, it's that the public has a strong voice and
Yes.
they're not afraid to make themselves heard. Yeah.
Yes. So most people have the myth that business is difficult in Africa, right? What is one skill or a couple of skills you think is required for an entrepreneur to survive in Africa or to be successful in Africa?
That's a good question. Humility.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Especially when you're dealing with the government, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But not just that, but you know, there's a archetype of a founder in Africa that has access to VC and PE networks in America, that speaks the jargon, that, you know, talks a smooth talk and walks a smooth walk. But I think when I say humility, what I mean is someone who's able to get into the weeds of customer acquisition and customer service. Unless you're listening to your customer, you're
I'm
building a
learning
product
from
for
them.
no one.
Yes.
Yeah, you
Yes.
know, at the end
True.
of the day, who are you building this product for? It's not for some kind of unsustainable business model where you just throw more and more funds into this black hole. You, in order to have a sustainable product, you need to be building your product for your customers, right? So that humility of getting down to the ground and being like, no, I actually interact day to day with the customers. And even if I don't, I'm definitely then paying close attention to my employee who does.
Yes.
So humility is a big one. I think resilience. There are obstacles at every turn. You may not get enabling government infrastructure from the get-go.
True.
But if you understand that there's a reason for that, there are reasons that the systems have been built in the way they've been built.
Yes.
So why don't we try and understand that, create a dialogue with your regulators, go to where they are, understand what motivates them and what concerns them, and then find ways to mitigate that truly and authentically and sincerely. And then I think people do recognize that as well, and they start to want to work with you.
Yeah.
They start to recognize that, okay, these are people who are trying to solve problems that we are too. So we can engage with them and offer them our support and assistance. So there's that. Not just giving up as soon as you see, oh, there's not something that's going to help me out, or a license that I can easily apply for.
Yes.
So there's that. And we certainly had a lot of that in the beginning stages of developing NSEasy. It's never been done before, this kind of KYC, where you don't upload any kind of document. So this is truly revolutionary. It's truly groundbreaking. But again, it was because we were willing to have that dialogue with our regulator and have that dialogue to say, we understand there's a reason that you have this process, but how can we make it easier while still addressing your concerns?
Yes.
So resilience, I think, is my second big quality. People always say you should talk in threes, but really I only have two. Humility and resilience.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
NSEasy is somewhat a first mover, right, within what you're trying to solve, right? What legacy do you want NSEasy to have and imprint within the Kenyan or the African ecosystem?
I think if we can increase retail investment in the Nairobi Securities Exchange and have women come into their power, come into being able to invest in the stock market, to be able to carry out these, transactions, execute trades, and do it either individually or within their collective investment groups, which we call chamas here. That would, once we start to see that impact and that inclusion, that literacy, we start to see that in the statistic that we have of our customer database, I think then we'll know we've done our job.
Okay. So there's a saying in advertising that culture is strategy for breakfast. And there's a culture now around investment, especially around women. They sort of invest in communities. And then I think that culture came from the Sacco culture, right? Are you currently building communities, or what are the communities you're currently looking at to plug NSEasy into?
Absolutely. So 100%, we're looking towards SACCOs. They're part of one of the partners that we want to approach.
Oh, lovely.
So like I say, going to where the customer is. So if they're with digital lenders, fine. If they're with SACCOs, which 100% a lot of them are, then we've tried to work with them in the past. It's interesting. There are complexities to working with SACCOs.
Yes, definitely.
It's a very, very niche market, and you really have to understand it in order to be able to incentivize them. But we do think we have a serious value proposition for them. So if you're a SACCO listening to this, 100% get in touch. So there's that. There are chamas, like I was saying, collectives of women, investment groups. But also, chamas are not limited to women. They're also male. So yeah, chamas. So having them, whether it's part of our awareness strategy, being to educate them and having forums that they can attend. But yeah, there are so many ways to access them. There are actually formal associations around some of these collectives. So we certainly intend to target them.
Kenya is one of the biggest cryptocurrency or Bitcoin traders in Africa. Do you see this as a threat for NSEasy?
Not really. I think because of the visibility of the products that are, or the companies that are on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, there's a certain comfort that comes with knowledge and familiarity.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
because the founders and CEOs of these companies are people that we see every
Every
day
day.
on the TV, or we hear them on the radio, we see them in the
Yeah.
newspaper,
Yes.
we can almost, you know how I was saying earlier about how your knowledge of these companies is really what should drive your
Yeah.
investment
You can see their
decision.
products, you can see them every day. It's more like a
Exactly.
human brand.
Exactly. Like
Okay.
that knowledge, I think, is what will drive our ability to really penetrate the market,
True.
that comfort and that familiarity. Whereas with Bitcoin and crypto, I do think our market will maybe one day get there, but at the present moment,
Currently, yes.
it's limited to a certain section of society and a
And
certain
even knowledge base. Yes.
exactly. Yeah.
So finally, I like asking all of my audience, so guess this question.
Uh-huh.
If you were the president,
Yeah.
right, of Kenya,
Yeah.
something happens and you become the president of Kenya today. Tell me 3 things you would change that would help the tech ecosystem, one,
Mhm.
and then 3 things you would change that would help the retail investment.
Interesting. Okay. So for the tech ecosystem, I would create a subsection of the Ministry of ICT that deals with innovation. I think one of the challenges we face is that the Central Bank of Kenya can only, as a matter of mandate, they can only interact with licensed entities.
True.
And there are so many entities that want to come into the market and become licensed, but have so many questions around that, right?
Yes.
Licensing is such a costly and time consuming exercise that
Yes.
before I get licensed, I really have to ensure certain things are in place.
Yeah.
So,
Seems like you must almost start the business first.
exactly, you start the business, you don't have a license. So, especially if you're in a heavily regulated industry, like if
Yes.
you're a fintech,
Yes.
then you can't actually commence operations or do wide testing.
Mm-hmm.
So without that license. So it's a chicken and egg. And
Yes.
what
True.
I would suggest is that there's a subsection of an authority, the Ministry of ICT, that can deal with innovation and say, look, we work closely with the CBK, we know what their requirements are. There are certain ambiguities or difficulties, let's say, that you are facing in interpreting the legislation.
Mm-hmm.
We can help you with that. Not to
Yeah.
worry. We have resources and, we're credible, reliable. We are from the government itself. So we can help you to communicate the concerns that we have because, it's very, very time consuming. Every single fintech comes and says, what are your concerns? What are your concerns? If there is one way of distributing this information efficiently, that would be great. So that's one suggestion. Two more to enable the tech industry, taxes.
Oh wow! Are you sure you're not friends with Ruto?
No. I mean, what I mean is remove taxes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, exactly.
Let's create an enabling environment, right? Let's, offer companies that are just starting out. I mean, when you combine the fact that we are trying to obtain a proof of concept with the fact
True.
that we don't have unlimited funding,
True.
and then you pile on top of that all these business permits and taxes
Regulations,
and
things like that.
licenses,
Yes.
it is almost impossible for your startup to thrive. You may have a great idea
Yeah.
that you're building for your own community, so you understand the need intimately, but you will never get off the ground for these financial reasons.
True.
So tax breaks for companies below a certain threshold
Yes.
revenue.
True. That's very important.
Again, you've asked me to speak in threes, but I only have two.
Okay, that's fine.
And then for retail investing,
yes,
that was the other
retail,
question you
yes.
asked me. If I was the president, I would fund NSEasy, would give them unlimited source of funds. No. I would certainly promulgate the partnership that we are currently exploring with the Hustler Fund.
Yes.
Just to, as part of my objective as the president of Kenya,
yes.
is certainly to ensure that society is financially healthy, that they have access to ways to improve their financial inclusion and literacy, and an alternative source of investment that they are familiar with. Like I say, brands they encounter every day, and I would really encourage them to become stakeholders of those brands.
Of those brands, yeah.
And so I would certainly have this partnership with NSEasy and between the NSEasy and Hustler Fund. And I would also, to promote retail investing, just have that education and awareness
Yes,
exercise,
training, very,
you know,
very
to
important.
really drive that and say the stock market is nothing to be scared of. In fact, you would stand to make money from this. There is, however, capital gains tax of 15%.
True.
Again, that's another tax that I might abolish for investors who have under a certain amount of
Yes.
total investment
Yes.
in the NSE. But
Okay.
I do understand also that the Nairobi Securities Exchange themselves actually do want to increase and encourage retail investment.
Okay.
Yes. And I think we'll be seeing more from them as well
Okay.
about their strategy to do so in the next 5 years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
A final brand payoff or brand message, what you want every of our audience to remember about NSEasy. I love the name, by the way.
Yes.
Yes.
What do I want our customers to remember, or any other brand? NSEasy is here to democratize the stock market.
Okay.
We're here to bring the stock market to the common man. We're here to demystify the stock market. And I can't wait to see more men and women involved in retail investing, starting small and then making it an incrementally bigger investment.
Okay.
One of my favorite stories is of our most active customer, who's actually a waitress. And
Lovely.
so every time she gets a tip from her customers and has a little extra to spare, she invests in a different stock. And I think what I love most about her journey is that she's, like I said, made a small investment, and then you can see that she's observing what's happening with that investment.
Yes.
You know, she hasn't sold off anything she owns yet, but you can see that she's observing how her stock interacts with the news and what she knows and information that she has. And for me, that is the case study of the customer that we're trying to attract.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I like that she's very deliberate.
Yeah.
About it.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure meeting you.
This was wonderful.